Hello. Today I'm going to share with you 10 pieces of advice that I would have given my 47-year-old self, that's me 10 years ago, about making a move abroad and settling here in France. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Patricia Brooks, and 6 years ago, I left the United States and I moved to the south of France. And now I help women who are ready to start the next chapters of their lives living in a foreign country find the confidence and courage to do that. And on this channel, I produce content about life in France and moving abroad and digging down deep to find that confidence, that courage, that grit that you need so that you can live the kind of life you know you were meant to live. And today I'm sharing 10 pieces of advice that I would give my younger self. All right. So the first thing that I would tell my 47-year-old self is, Patricia, don't be afraid to look at the truth. And this stems from my desire to want to live in France, but not doing a whole lot about it because I hadn't looked at my bank statements to see if I would have enough to get a visitor visa. I had not looked into the requirements on how much money was required to get that visitor visa. And so in my mind, in my dreams, I wanted to move to France, but I was too afraid to look at the truth. And what that cost me was about a year, maybe a year and a half delay getting to France. Now, I was afraid to see what was in my bank account and see if it measured up or not, because I was afraid that it wouldn't and that would dash my dreams forever. But that really wasn't realistic. If I looked at the truth, the facts, what was in my bank account, and it was less than what was required, then I would know what I was aiming for, right? I could say, okay, I'm, $10,000 shy, right? I'm $15,000 shy. I need to make that up so that I can make this move abroad if it was really something that was important to me. So that's the first piece of advice that I would give my younger self. Don't be afraid to look at the truth. And the second piece of advice that I would give the young 47-year-old Patricia is challenge ideas. Challenge ideas. Now, this one stems from the fact that after I was challenged to look at what was in my bank account and see how much more I would need in order to make a move to France, I was challenged by my coach. I realized that I had enough money to support myself in France for at least 3 years. Problem was, it was in my emergency fund. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine and a coach who I went to coach training school with, Umbretta. And I told her, I'm like, oh yeah, I looked into this and I could go on a visitor visa. I have enough to support myself. And she said, oh, that's wonderful. When are you going? And I'm like, well, the problem is, it's in my emergency fund. And emergencies don't include making a move to France. They had it in my mind. And she was quiet for a second and she responded, what if moving to France is the emergency? Now, before she said that, like that struck me. It was like, whoa, what if it was? It struck me, it gave me permission, because before she said that, an emergency was only my car breaking down or the water heater in my home breaking or being laid off from work or needing to pay a medical bill, right? Those were the emergencies that my emergency fund was there for, not to start my life over in a new country. But what if moving to France was the emergency? Oh. She challenged this idea that I had. And in doing so, she gave me permission to use that money how I wanted to use that money. And it turns out that I believe that it was the emergency, because I've been here 6 years. I'm picturing myself in the life I had 6 years ago in Richmond, Virginia. And I don't know who I would be now, what my attitude would be like, what my mental state would be like, because I was not happy then. And so if I was just continuing down the same path because, I had this money that could support me in France, but, it's not a real emergency, how would I be struggling or suffering right now? So that's the second thing that I would tell my younger self. Now, when I moved to France, I came without a job, and I had told myself that, when I get to France, then I'll start to look for a job. They'll take me more seriously when I'm on the ground. The thing was, I wasn't being truthful with myself with that. 3 months into my life here in France, a former coworker and I had a conversation, and she asked me how my job search was going. This was 3 months in, and I had to tell her I had not looked for or applied for one job, not one. And that was because I did not want to find another job. I did not want to work for anybody else. And I really just needed some time off from work. And this move abroad was initially a career break. Now, at that 3-month mark, when I had that aha, that, oh yeah, Patricia, you don't want to work for anybody else. The fact that I am not independently wealthy meant that I would have to find another way to support myself once my savings ran out. Whether that's finding, a sugar daddy or win the lottery or start my own business, at some point I would have to start to move in that direction. So 3 months in, having this awareness, I could have given myself a time frame. In a year's time, you're going to check in with yourself to see if you have gotten enough rest, if you are rejuvenated and ready to start that next professional chapter in your life and move forward from that. The fact that I didn't have that timeline, that deadline, a time frame, meant that it was open-ended. And it was open-ended until perhaps I ran out of money, right? Not necessarily the wisest thing to do if you think that you might want to start a business, which I did. So that's the third piece of advice. Give yourself a time frame for your career break. Check in to see how you're feeling, to see if you are ready to start that next chapter, that next professional move in your career. And what that cost me was probably a year and a half of time that I could have been starting my business, doing the research, getting things lined up so that now I could have been a year further along. I say this, and I would tell my younger self this: set a deadline for your career break. But I fully believe that where I am today is where I am supposed to be, and that things are working out for me. However, going forward, when I'm in a situation where I may be taking a break, maybe I'm taking some time off from work or from doing YouTube videos or whatever that is, I need to set a time frame in advance so that I can check in at that time point to see if I have gotten what I need from that rest in order to continue on. Otherwise it could go on indefinitely, and that wouldn't necessarily get me to where I want to be. Give yourself a time frame if you're taking a career break or if you're taking a break of some other sort, so that you don't lose complete traction and momentum. Number 4 has to do with something that is tied to money mindset. And I would tell my 47-year-old self, Patricia, ask for and invest in help as soon as you know you need it. Now, this is challenging. Sometimes you can ask for help, and help can be free, but oftentimes it's something that you have to sign up for, pay for, invest in. And when my mindset is not right around money and I feel scarcity and lack in my life, I can feel the need that, I'm not really sure what to do next here, or I need support, or I need coaching. But I can also feel the tug of, but if you spend that money on this, then you won't have it later, and you might need that to live on, right? So I would tell myself, get the help and invest in it as soon as you know that you need it. Now, prime example is for my business here. When I started my business, I made a big investment in a program to help me stand up my business. I paid $5,000 for a program, and it was money well spent. I had my return on investment probably 6 months into my business. And so that felt really good. And it worked. It helped me to create a structure. It helped me to find clients. It helped me to think through some of the things that wouldn't just come to me. And so I put my head down and I continued on this path. And it worked. It worked for the first year. It worked for the next 6 months. My business was doing really well. And then I hit a little bit of a speed bump and things slowed down. I had a month without a sale. And that month turned into 2 months, no sale. And that didn't feel good. That turned into 3 months, no sale. But I was still doing what that program was telling me to do. That program that had worked for 18 months. And I did not veer off that path, right? I had invested in this program and was afraid to tell myself that I needed to invest in another program, another coach to help me get to the next step. And so I didn't. A 4th month rolled around with no sales. And it was at that point where I said, I can't go on like this anymore. I have to do something. I need help and I need to invest in it. And so it was then that I did that. And then 2 months after that, my business turned around. And that was the beginning of this year. So, I've gotten momentum. I'm getting exposure. My YouTube channel is taking off. And where would I have been if I had gotten help sooner, if I hadn't invested help sooner? So that is the 4th thing that I would have told my younger self. Don't let the scarcity mindset derail you. Now, number 5 is related to number 4. My superpower is focusing, putting my head down, doing the work, getting things done, following through. And that's great, right? Because I can get a lot accomplished. But this superpower can turn into my kryptonite when I need to pivot and I am still focused, head down, doing the thing that worked for 18 months, but no longer is working, right? So I would tell my 47-year-old self, Patricia, be focused, but be open to pivoting. Be aware of those signs that it's time to make a change. And this kind of piggybacks on that first one that I spoke about is don't be afraid to look at the truth. In month 2, at the end of month 2, that was the truth that I needed to make a correction. I needed to do something differently. But I said, no, it worked for me before. I'm going to continue, doing the same old thing. And you know what they say, if you keep on doing what you've always done, you're going to keep on getting what you've always gotten. Now, I've shared 5 pieces of advice that I would give my 47-year-old self. What one piece of advice would you give your younger self now that you've had the benefit of more years of experience? Let me know in the comments. Number 6 has to do with something that I discounted for 50 years of my life. And that is always listen to and trust and follow your intuition. I am living here in France, living my best life here in France because I listened to my intuition. It wasn't logical for me to quit my job and move to France and not know how I was going to support myself after my savings ran out. Yet I'm here and I'm thriving. Had I decided that no, logic always wins out, I wouldn't be here. And there are other experiences, other situations where I haven't listened to my intuition that said, don't do this thing. And it didn't feel good. It didn't feel right, but it was logical and I did it anyway. And I paid the price for it. One example was dating a guy here for 9 months. In the first couple of months, when we were getting to know each other, I got a sense that some of the questions I asked him and some of the answers he gave were a little bit surface, right? They didn't dig down deep enough. And I allowed him to just skate by, right? And then It turns out that, my suspicions were right. My intuition was right that, he wasn't the right person for me. And I could have avoided a hard breakup had I listened to my intuition. So I've packed that away, and I'm telling my younger self, and I'm telling myself today, always listen to and follow your intuition. Number 7 is I would tell my 47-year-old self, it's okay to be okay with what you have and where you are right now. Now, as an American, striving and achieving and pushing hard to get to the next level is something that many of us are ingrained with. I was. And so to be satisfied for the time being with what I have now and with where I am now is something that has taken some time to embrace. But when I do, I feel a level of peace that I hadn't experienced before. And even though I still have goals to go a little bit further, I allow myself to get to a place where I'm ready to move forward without necessarily pushing or struggling to make something happen. I really want to apply for French citizenship. And, some people say, do it now. And I'm feeling like, I want to do it now. But there's a part of me, my intuition, that says, Patricia, the time is not right. You want to apply when you feel solid and that your dossier will be solid. And so you have the right to be okay with being okay with where you are right now. And when the time is right, you will know it and you will take those steps. And so I'm heeding this advice that I'm giving my 47-year-old self. I'm heeding that advice now because I know I've seen how when I've pushed for things and struggled for things, I might get a watered down version of that thing. And in the end, it doesn't feel as good because I'm worn out from the fight of trying to get that thing. So I have the right to be okay with being okay with where I am and with what I have right now. Number 8 is a fun one. I would tell my younger self, entertain more. Have people over to the house more. I am someone who has introvert tendencies, and entertaining was not anything that I really enjoyed. You got to clean the house and all of that. But what I found is that when I have friends over to the house for dinner or for lunch or for drinks, I'm fed. It feels so good to get to know these people who are my friends in a different way, not at a cafe, but in my home. It seems like the conversations are better. They're deeper. They're longer. They're richer. When I first moved here, I met a woman named Myrna, and she lived in Perpignan for a couple of years. She's an American, and she has lived in a lot of different places. And one of the things she said to me was that whenever she moved to someplace new, she would have the neighbors over for cocktails. And in that way, she'd get to know the people. They get to know her a little bit. And it broke the ice. And I thought, that's a really neat idea. I wish I could do that. I wish I had that personality to do that. But now I would tell my 47-year-old self, entertain more. Open your home more. Number 9 is I would tell my younger self to remind myself that nothing is forever. Things change. And this is good advice because when we forget that, when we don't remind ourselves of this often enough, we can get attached to things. And then when those things go away or those things change, then we feel like we are losing something. And it feels hard. Right? There's a struggle involved with the letting go of the thing that has changed or gone away. I've lived in Surrey for 5 years, and over the course of the 5 years, I've seen the landscape change. I've seen, trees die and have to be removed. I've seen the receptacles for recycling and for trash. First, they were underground and you didn't really notice them. Now they're above ground and they're really not that pretty, but it's what it is, right? And it's a part of that change. And if you get so stuck on what is, you can have a problem. You can have a problem with the resistance to the change. It doesn't feel good. Another good example for me was I had a doctor from day one when I moved here because my doctor was my landlord and I didn't really have to worry about it. Well, he retired a year and a half ago and then I had to worry about it. And it was hard to find another doctor. And I had some resentment over the fact that my doctor retired because this was making my life harder. So I would tell myself, Patricia, remember that nothing lasts forever. Things change. Don't get too attached. And the final thing that I would tell 47-year-old Patricia Brooks is that your feelings matter, so pay attention to them. Now, a lot of these things on the list are things that have to do with feeling fearful of looking at what was in my bank account, of not facing the fact that, 2 months of no sales is not a good thing and you need to change. There was a feeling in there. It didn't feel good, but I resisted that feeling. I doubled down and let that feeling fester. And that didn't feel good. That blocked my energy. That blocked my creativity. And it caused me to spiral down a little bit into a little bit of a funk. Had I noticed those feelings more quickly, perhaps I would not have permitted them to go on for so long. Perhaps I would have pivoted sooner. I speak of trusting your intuition because for me, intuition is a feeling. It's don't do that. There's something doesn't feel right about that. Or it's this is an odd idea, but that's what I need to be doing. And so if I am not giving my feelings credence, if I'm not noticing them, then it's going to be harder for me to tap into that intuition. It's going to be harder for me to face facts. And I think over the last year, I've had this huge shift around tapping into my feelings and knowing when something is right for me, when something isn't wrong for me. And I think that can save us a lot of time and energy and pain. So those are 10 things that I would tell my 47-year-old self about moving abroad, but life in general, so that she would have an easier time of it. Which one of these would you adopt and tell your younger self? Let me know in the comments. So if you're tuning in and you are looking to make a move abroad, I welcome you to download my Pathfinder Oracle guide. It's a guide to help you show you where you are in the path and what steps you need to take based on where you are. And you can download that by going to thecouragecatalyst.com/Pathfinder. All right. So that is all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to check out these videos next, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.